Anya's beauty wasn't accidental. It was a masterpiece, meticulously crafted over years. She had that kind of smile that could disarm the most guarded of men, making them feel as if they were the only ones in the room. Her eyes were the perfect mix of warmth and mystery, pulling them in, never letting them know the truth behind the mask she wore so flawlessly. She knew how to listen, how to smile, how to make them feel special. But that was the game, a game she'd perfected long ago. Her life had always been about control, about creating connections that led nowhere, about seduction that never lasted beyond the moment. Men would approach her thinking they had a chance at something real, something intimate, and she'd let them. After all, every good hunter needed to lure their prey into a false sense of security. She had learned that lesson early on. And then, when the night was still young and the wine was flowing, she would lead them back to her apartment. It was always the same: the charm, the smile, the whispers that felt intimate and genuine. But the sex wasn't about pleasure. It was about power. Power over their bodies, their will. She had perfected a drug, an undetectable toxin that would slowly render her victims powerless. It didn't take much. A little slip into their drink and they'd be too relaxed, too compliant. And that was when she struck. Suffocation. A slow, deliberate act. No struggles, no resistance. Just a moment of helplessness, a body too weak to fight, a life slipping away quietly. She would lay them out, their limbs sprawled in such a way that it almost looked peaceful. Then she'd wipe everything clean. No fingerprints, no evidence, nothing to connect her to the crime. The police never suspected her. They always found the men dead, alone, with no one to trace back to. And that was how she liked it. Perfectly invisible, perfectly untouchable.
But then everything changed the night she met Victor. Victor wasn't like the others. He wasn't drawn in by her beauty, by the allure of her voice. He was older, gruff, and had an air about him that made him seem like a man who'd seen the darkest corners of life. He wasn't seduced by her charm, and that intrigued her. She didn't like to feel like she was being studied, but Victor was different. He didn't smile easily, but when he did, there was something calculating in it, something sharp. He wasn't some random stranger. Victor had a history. He was a former cop who had left the force under mysterious circumstances. His eyes carried a weight, the kind of weight only a man who had faced death could bear. Anya wasn't sure whether to be intrigued or cautious, but she couldn't resist. She liked the challenge. At first, she just wanted to have fun with him, a fling, nothing more. But as the days passed, she realized Victor wasn't just another conquest. He was someone who could see through her lies, who noticed the small things she didn't even realize she was doing. He didn't trust her, but there was something about him that made her feel off balance. They began an affair, passionate and intense, but with a strange undercurrent. Victor would ask questions she didn't want to answer. He wasn't prying for the sake of prying. He was testing her, probing. His mind was working and Anya could sense it. He was catching on, piecing together the fragments of her carefully constructed life. He started to notice patterns, and that was when the cracks began to show.
One evening, Victor and Anya were sitting in her apartment. The dim lights flickered slightly, and the air was thick with unspoken tension. Victor, leaning back in his chair, watched her closely. He was silent for a moment, his gaze steady. Then, as if he had been waiting for the right time, he asked, "Anya, "Have you ever killed anyone?" The words hit her like a cold slap, and for the first time in their affair, she froze. It wasn't the shock of the question that rattled her, but the calm in his voice. He wasn't accusing her. He wasn't angry. He was simply asking. She turned her head slowly, avoiding his gaze, her heart racing in her chest. "Why do you ask?" she managed, her voice betraying the slightest tremor. He didn't answer right away. He simply watched her, waiting. "I think you have," he said quietly. "I think you've been hiding it all along. You're not just a woman who loves attention, Anya. You're someone who gets off on control, on power over others, and I think you've taken that to the extreme." Anya stood up quickly, her breath catching in her throat. Victor was right. He had cracked the code. And yet, despite knowing the truth, she didn't want to lose control. She didn't want to lose him. She walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You think you can save me, Victor? But I've been broken for so long that I'm not sure anyone can put me back together." Victor was silent for a long time. He wasn't afraid of her, but something told him he should be. "I'm not trying to save you. I just want to stop you before you hurt anyone else. I've seen it before, Anya. People like you. You think you're untouchable, but you're not." The silence between them was thick, and for the first time, Anya felt a fear she hadn't felt in years. Victor wasn't just another man in her life. He was someone who had figured her out, and she couldn't afford to let that happen. That night, Anya knew it was over. Victor had pieced together her pattern, and if he wasn't going to catch her, he would ruin her. She had no choice. She had to leave. She had to disappear. Before Victor could make his move, she was already gone. Her apartment was empty when he arrived the next morning, and every trace of her had been erased. She had left behind a carefully planned trail of false leads, a phone number that wasn't hers, an address that wasn't real. She had outsmarted him, just like she had outsmarted every other man who thought they could catch her. Victor searched for days, his mind racing as he combed through every lead, every piece of evidence. But she was always one step ahead. She had vanished, like a ghost in the night, leaving only her memories and the chilling realization that no one was truly safe.
Victor sat alone in his apartment, the weight of the case pressing down on him. He had almost caught her. He had almost stopped her, but she had slipped away, like smoke through his fingers. As he looked out the window, the city stretched before him, a maze of streets and shadows. He had learned something about Anya, but he had also learned something about himself. Not all battles are won by force. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in knowing when to walk away, when to let go of the fight. Anya had been a predator. She had hunted with precision, and she had never hesitated to strike when it suited her. But Victor realized that her greatest strength wasn't in her ability to kill. It was in her ability to disappear, to live in the shadows, always out of reach. He had tried to save her, but the truth was, she had never wanted saving. She had only wanted freedom. Freedom from the consequences of her actions, freedom from the world that had tried to cage her. As the sun set over the city, Victor leaned back in his chair and let out a long sigh. He had lost. But the lesson, the wisdom remained.
Some shadows are meant to stay hidden forever. And no matter how much you try to chase them, they will always slip through your fingers. Anya was out there, somewhere, waiting for her next victim. And Victor would never forget the face of the woman who had nearly destroyed him, the woman who killed without remorse, and the woman who would never truly be caught.